Dr. Emily Carter had always believed that humanity was not alone in the universe. As a leading astrophysicist at the SETI Institute, she had spent her entire career scanning the skies, searching for signs of extraterrestrial life. But after years of listening to the silence of the cosmos, she was beginning to lose hope. That was until the night she received the signal. It was a late evening in the observatory, and Emily was the last one left. She was just about to pack up and head home when her computer started to beep, an irregular pattern she had never seen before. Her heart raced as she leaned in closer, her eyes glued to the screen. The pattern was unmistakably artificial, a series of pulses and pauses, repeating over and over. Could this be it? She whispered to herself, barely daring to believe. She quickly ran the signal through a series of tests, ruling out interference from satellites, earthly transmissions, and natural cosmic phenomena. Each test came back negative. The signal was real, and it was coming from deep space, far beyond the reach of any human-made technology. Emily immediately contacted her colleague, Dr. Alex Morales, who arrived at the observatory within the hour. Together, they analyzed the signal, trying to decipher its meaning. "It's some kind of code," Alex said, excitement evident in his voice. "But it's like nothing we've ever seen before." The signal was made up of short and long bursts of radio waves, forming a pattern that repeated at regular intervals. It was as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate with them. For days, they worked tirelessly, sending the signal to experts around the world. Cryptographers, linguists, and mathematicians all weighed in, but no one could crack the code. The signal defied all known methods of interpretation. Then, one night, as Emily stared at the signal for what felt like the thousandth time, she noticed something, a faint fluctuation in the background noise, almost like a secondary pattern hiding beneath the primary signal. "Alex, look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. They isolated the background pattern and enhanced it, revealing a series of faint, rhythmic pulses. It was another code, hidden within the first. But this time, it was different, simpler, almost like a primer. "This could be the key," Alex said. "If we can decode this, it might help us understand the main signal." They worked through the night, deciphering the hidden code. Slowly but surely, it began to reveal a series of basic mathematical concepts, numbers, geometric shapes, and equations. It was a universal language, one that any intelligent species might use to communicate. As they unraveled the primer, the main signal started to make more sense. It was a message, but it wasn't just any message. It was a map, coordinates pointing to a location in space, a place light years away from Earth. What could be out there? Emily wondered aloud, her mind racing with possibilities. "We have to send a probe," Alex said. "It's the only way to know for sure." They presented their findings to the world, sparking a frenzy of excitement and debate. Governments, space agencies, and private companies all vied for the chance to be the first to explore the coordinates. Years later, the probe was finally ready. It was launched into space, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of all humanity. Emily and Alex watched as it disappeared into the night sky, its destination a distant star system far beyond their reach. As they waited for the probe to reach its target, they couldn't help but wonder what they would find. Was it another civilization, reaching out across the void? Or something entirely different, something they couldn't even imagine? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, the signal had changed everything. Humanity was no longer alone, and the universe would never be the same.
One sunny afternoon, Sarah was walking through the park. The weather was warm, and the birds were singing. As she walked along the path, she noticed something on the ground. It was a small, brown leather wallet. She picked up the wallet and looked around. There weren't many people in the park. Whose wallet could this be? She wondered. She opened it carefully and saw some cash and a few credit cards, but no ID. Sarah decided to wait by the bench near the path in case the owner came back to look for it. While she waited, she thought about what she would do if it were her wallet. She would hope that someone honest found it and returned it. After about 15 minutes, a man came running down the path, looking worried. He was checking his pockets frantically. Sarah waved to him and held up the wallet. Is this yours? She asked. The man's face lit up with relief. Yes. Thank you so much, he said, out of breath. I thought I lost it for good. Sarah smiled and handed him the wallet. I found it on the ground, she explained. I thought someone would come back for it. The man thanked her again and offered to buy her a coffee to show his appreciation. Sarah politely declined, saying it was just the right thing to do. As she walked away, Sarah felt good about helping someone. She thought to herself, it's always nice to do a good deed. One evening, John was relaxing in his living room, reading a book. Suddenly, he heard a loud crash from outside. Curious, he got up and looked out the window. His neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, was struggling to lift a fallen tree branch that had landed in her yard during a storm. John quickly put on his shoes and went outside to help her. Do you need a hand? He asked. Mrs. Wilson, who was in her 70s, smiled gratefully. Oh, John. Thank you. I was just trying to move this branch, but it's heavier than I thought. Without hesitation, John grabbed the branch and, with a little effort, lifted it. He carefully moved it to the side of her yard, away from the walkway. Mrs. Wilson watched him, visibly relieved. That storm was stronger than I expected, she said. I didn't even hear this branch fall until just now. John nodded. It was pretty windy earlier. I'm glad you weren't outside when it happened. He looked at the rest of her yard, checking for more damage. Everything else seems fine, he added. Mrs. Wilson smiled and offered him some lemonade. You're always such a helpful neighbor, John. Thank you again. John chuckled and waved it off. No problem at all. That's what neighbors are for. As he walked back to his house, John felt good about helping out. It was just a small gesture, but he knew it made a big difference to Mrs. Wilson. It was a rainy Tuesday morning, and Emily was running late for work. She quickly grabbed her bag, put on her coat, and hurried out the door. The rain was coming down hard, and the streets were wet and slippery. As she rushed to catch the bus, she realized she had forgotten her umbrella. Emily sighed, but there was no time to go back home. She pulled her coat tighter and tried to cover her head with her bag. By the time she reached the bus stop, she was already soaked. A few other people were waiting, all holding their umbrellas. One woman noticed Emily and smiled sympathetically. Just then, the bus arrived. As Emily boarded, she shook the water from her coat and found an empty seat near the back. She sat down, trying to dry off as much as possible. The bus was warm, and soon Emily started to relax. About halfway through the ride, an elderly man got on the bus, holding a small bouquet of flowers. Emily watched as he carefully sat down across from her. The man smiled at the flowers, as if he were thinking about someone special. Curious, Emily leaned forward a bit. Are those flowers for someone special? She asked kindly. The man looked up, surprised but happy to answer. Yes, they are. It's my wife's birthday today. I bring her flowers every year. Emily smiled warmly. That's so sweet. The man chuckled. She loves roses. Even after all these years, she still gets excited when she sees them. The bus ride seemed to go by faster after that short conversation. When Emily finally reached her stop, the rain had lightened up. As she stepped off the bus, she felt a little better about her soggy start to the day. Maybe, she thought, forgetting her umbrella wasn't so bad after all.